guys, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about slavery, everyone's favorite topic, and we're going to talk about why Christians love defending this part of the Bible. It's very strange. The Bible is creepy when it talks about slavery, it's creepy when it talks about rape, it's creepy when it talks about marriage, and we're going to talk about the objections that you typically get from Christians when it comes to them acknowledging the fact that the Bible says you can have slaves. And we're just going to read. We're just going to read what the book says, okay? Let's read it. So, in Exodus 21, verse 2, it says, "If thou buy a Hebrew servant, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master have given him a wife, then and she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, while he shall go out by himself." So what that's saying is that if the slave master were to give their male slave, and this is a Hebrew slave, by the way, this is instructions This is instructions from God to the Hebrews to enslave other Hebrews. So they're supposed to let the Hebrew slaves go after 7 years, apparently. But if the master gives that slave a wife, then he's supposed to leave the wife behind after that 7 years. Like, it's almost like a little loophole. Like, what if you what if you're the slave and you don't want to leave your wife and children? Like, it sounds like a loophole just to keep them in there for forever. Next, let's talk about, where else are we? In verse 5, "And if my master shall plainly say, verse 5, "If the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free." And then it talks about piercing his ear, and that's like the mark that this slave belongs to me forever. That's how you get them to stay forever, by giving them a wife and them having some children, and then basically they're coerced to stay. Because again, who wants to leave your wife and child? Like, are you serious? So this is and then there's even worse rules when it comes to the slaves that aren't Jewish. All right, you guys, so let's talk about the slaves that are not Jewish slaves. Let's read from Leviticus chapter 25. Let's start at verse 44. It says, "And as for your male and female slaves, whom you may have from the nations that are around you, from them you may buy male and female slaves. Moreover, you may buy the children of the strangers who dwell among you, and their families who are with you, which they beget in your land, and they shall become your property. And you may take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them as a possession. They shall be your permanent slaves. But regarding your brethren, the children of Israel, you shall not rule over one another with rigor." So that's saying that you can enslave people around you. So if you want to enslave the Midianites, if you want to enslave people like the Assyrians, the Babylonians, no one cares. God doesn't care. He is telling you that you can do this, or at least he's telling them that. And so the common objection that we get when it comes to this part is, "Oh, that was just for the Jews. That's not for us today. That's not like something that we follow." It's the same objection that's typically brought up when people are talking about how, right after in Leviticus 18:22, where it says you're supposed to kill all the gay people, how it says that you can't wear clothes made of more than one fabric, how you're not supposed to get a haircut, how you're not supposed to plant more than one crop in the same field. People say that, oh, that's just for the Jews at the time so that they could live their life proper. Is owning a slave proper is that proper? I don't think that's proper. I'm sorry to tell you. And then, so to that, let's raise the question. I thought that, according to Hebrews 13, that God was the same yesterday, today, and forever. I thought that he was, why is he changing? So it was okay for them to own slaves, but it's not okay for you to. It's not okay for us to in this present time. Like, when did it change? Because again, he's the same yesterday, today, and forever, right? Right? One would think that, hello, I thought he was omnibenevolent, omnipresent, and all this other omniness. I thought he was like the perfect being. So why are you changing your mind? You didn't get it right the first time, God? You didn't get it right the first... Nope, he didn't get it right the first time. He didn't get it right the second time either. Let's talk about the New Testament, because that's what Christians love to go to. Oh, the New Testament is where it is the new covenant under Jesus and all of this. And there's only let Christians tell it, there's only 2 commandments you really have to follow. And it's love your neighbor and, I don't even know, keep the commandments. Jesus said to do so. Jesus said this when he was directly asked, how do you enter heaven? And he said to keep the commandments and something else. But they talk about slavery in the New Testament too. So here we go. So again, I'm just reading. People always talk about the context. That's another objection. I didn't even write it down. That's an objection that Christians always talk about. You don't know the context. This is taken out of context. In what context is it okay to own people? That's what you need to ask someone. When is it okay to own someone? People will say things like, oh, well, it was the best that they could have hoped for back then. Why? Why did God create a world where being enslaved is the best thing that you could have hoped for? Again, I thought he was omnibenevolent. Wouldn't you think that someone who was all good and all knowing would make a better world? And I know they're gonna say, the Christians are gonna say oh, well, Adam and Eve messed it up. How strange that poor little Adam and Eve can mess up God's plan. They're that powerful. Who's more powerful? I don't understand. Who's more powerful, us or him? Clearly us, because anyway. Oh, and another thing that I forgot about is another objection that they'll talk about is how, oh, it's just indentured servitude. It's just a little indentured servitude. What do you mean a little indentured servitude? That's not moral either. I'm sorry. Working to pay off a debt, that sounds a lot like sharecropping from, 1866 and beyond. That's not moral. I don't think that's, do you think that's moral? That's something that you need to ask. You need to ask yourself, is that moral? What? No. Next, New Testament. It's getting hot now. New Testament. In Ephesians 6:5, it says, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness in your heart, as unto Christ. It later goes on to say, I'm surprised I didn't even write this part down. It says that you're supposed to, I know this off the top of my head. It says later on that you're supposed to obey your masters no matter how cruel. And then later it does say, here's an objection that you'll get, where even later it says masters to treat your slaves well. It most certainly does say that in the Bible. Why couldn't it just say, do not own slaves? Why couldn't it just say that? Why couldn't it just say that? An objection that you'll commonly get is, oh, well, God knew that God knew that people were going to own slaves anyway, so he just wanted to regulate it. Again, who's more powerful? God, just because God didn't, what? What is going on here? God told people not to murder people as well, but people still do it. He said, do not steal, but people still do it. Why couldn't he just say, do not own slaves? Do you realize these are the verses that they use to uphold slavery in the United States? Do you understand this? The harm that it has caused? Next, Colossians 3:22. Servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in singleness of the heart, fearing God. I don't really know what that means, but like it means, once again, obey your masters. Why do we have to obey our masters? Why can't it just be do not own people as slaves? That's really all I have. And then if someone still has an objection to you, then you need to ask them, why are you defending slavery so hard? Like, you're really going really hard. And it's the thing where Christians have this thing, they can't denounce one part of their theology. Otherwise, they'll be accused of cherry picking, which they do, but we're not going to talk about that. So, in order to not be accused of cherry picking, they are, dancing 20 miles around the question. Oh, it's just indentured servitude. They get to let the slaves go after 7 years. Oh, and why is any of this allowed? None of this should be happening. None of this is legal, by the way. None of this is legal. I don't care if you are an indentured servant who owes a debt. Debtors' prisons are illegal now. Illegal in name, but in practice, not so much. But we're not talking about that right now. All of this is immoral, regardless of its legality. It is immoral to own people. It is immoral to force someone to work to pay a debt. And I don't care if you let them go after 7 years. In Exodus, it talks about how you can beat them as long as they don't die within a few days. When was that? In what context is that moral? Anyway, you guys, that is all that I have for you guys today. I'll be back here with more Bible study. Call me your pastor, and we are going to, we're going to really illuminate what the Bible really says. Christians don't read the Bible, and they need the pastors to read it for them. So I'll read it to you guys. Yeah, so come back here for more Bible knowledge, and I'll see you guys in the next one.